In a world where blue cards are near the top of the win percentage, it means that your average skill player is winning with them handedly. Given how skill testing blue is, that would mean that blue is the best color in the cube by a country mile. Meanwhile, everyone playing against Mean Mythic is blue combo, blue control, blue black reanimate, is it or Azorius tempo. Blue X artifacts. I pray to see Boros at least twice to draft for my free wins. Blue is so blatantly the most powerful color in the cube, it's hilarious that allegedly good players are pretending otherwise. Surprise, if you give the Vintage Cube for the first time, they have more success with turning creatures sideways as opposed to trying out combos. Not sure how useful it is to look at the data without filtering top users. The people unfamiliar with drafting Vintage Cubes are going to completely skew the data in favor of easier archetypes. Hilarious. Data is only as powerful as the mind interpreting it. So these are a lot of responses I got for the previous couple of videos I posted. Looking at the data for 17 lands, for the card data for the Vintage Cube on Magic Arena. And the general census just seems to be, I love this meme, very, very telling for the current situation is like our blessed counterspell, our glorious tinker, our noble flash, heroic reanimate versus their barbarous Ragavan, parallax wave, brutish lightning helix. Yeah, just a lot of comments thinking the blue decks are the best. The data suggested otherwise, but saying the data is wrong. Saying that the Boros decks are easier to play and the blue decks are really skill testing. So the smarter players are playing these decks, all that kind of stuff. And we finally have the full data set from 17 lands to answer a lot of these questions. Now, the data's only been up for about 2 days, and I wanted to get out an answer to this specific question. Is the Boros deck easier to play? And are good players with the blue cards outperforming everyone? That's what I want to answer today. So today's going to be just a shorter video answering that. There's so much more to dig into the data that I'm looking at, but it takes a while. So I wanted to get the quick video out here, just looking at what the data says. We'll look at that later. So the first kind of comment I got was like, we need more time. Things are going to change. People are going to adapt to the metagame. So the cube was up for 3 weeks, and not a lot changed over the course of those 3 weeks. I'm just using these two as representative cards for all the Boros cards. If you missed my previous videos, Boros is just crushing by like so much. The data, even on day one, it was like Boros is crushing it. I don't know what's up with the people commenting the data suggests blue is winning, because there's like the top 150 performing cards were all Boros. Anyway, that didn't change. So this is all players, the Premier Draft best of 1 format. And a really common comment I got was, this data is only best of 1. It's different for best of 3. It's not. I'll have more best of 3 data in the next video, but they're basically the same. So I'm just using this because there's more data in best of 1. But you can look at 17 lands yourself if you want to like check the best of 3 data. So yeah, over time, nothing really happened to change Boros between the blue decks for all players. For top players, there was a bit of fluctuation. Specifically, it seems like Deathgreeter's champion, and this trend holds true for a lot of the red cards in the cube. They did have a little bit of a dip in the middle of the cube's tenure, but then they came back up towards the end. I don't know what happened over here, so I don't know. Like the data gets a little weird at this point. So, but for this point, it's pretty like consistent. Good players with Boros cards are beating good players with blue cards in terms of overall win rate. And this graph is my favorite example. This is comparing Guide of Souls in the hands of all players to Mana Drain, which is the best blue counterspell, in the hands of the top like 5 to 10% of players. I filter for players who are winning 60% of their games and above. Guide of Souls and Mana Drain, really similar. So yes, it is true. If we overlay the distribution, so this is a histogram of how many wins players got when playing decks with Guide of Souls in them compared to top players playing Mana Drain in them. You can see there's a lot less data for top players because it's about the top 10% of players. So there's a little bit more noise in the top player data, but you can see an average player playing Guide of Souls is only, what is this? 0.15 total wins expected behind a top player playing Mana Drain. And then when you look at top players playing Guide of Souls versus Mana Drain, like the top players are crushing it with Guide of Souls. The solid lines are the rolling average, and the thin lines are like the day-to-day real data. So it's a bit noisier day-to-day data, but the average is pretty consistent. That yeah, Guide of Souls in the hands of a top players, they're getting 7 wins 25% of the time or more, whereas the top players playing Mana Drain are getting 7 wins about 16% of the time. So it's almost 60% more 7-win decks when playing Guide of Souls in the hands of top players. So, and this holds true for many of the other cards in the cube. I'm using Guide of Souls as an example, but you can look at all of the data. It's just, there's nothing suggesting that the blue cards are winning more in the hands of the top players. It's all the Boros cards. The next thing I wanted to look at is how much do cards improve when in the hands of top players relative to all players. And this can give us some amount of capability to measure how skill testing a card is. So for example, we look at Guide of Souls. This is a histogram of it in the hand of all players versus it in the hands of top players. And we can see God of Souls, 25% win rate. But it's a 24% improvement in the expected number of wins when put in the hands of a top player, which is less than how much Mana Drain improves when put in the hands of a top player, which is 33% improvement. But Mana Drain does have an overall lower baseline win rate. You can see Mana Drain's getting 7-win decks 16% of the time in the hands of a top player, whereas this is getting 7-win decks 25% of the time. And like the Wandering Emperor, not a blue card, but this has a 31% win rate improvement in the hands of a top player relative to all players. Remand, 32% win rate improvement, and this one actually is getting a modest amount of total wins by top players, so that's pretty cool. Flash has, out of the cards I analyzed here, the highest baseline improvement when played by top players relative to all players. However, it also has a really low overall win rate compared to a lot of the cards, right? Flash's mean win rate in the hands of top players 3.79. Remand in the top players 3.96. And you can see Flash doesn't have many 7-win decks. It has a lot of 6, 5, and 4. So it's not as consistent as some of the better cards like Remand, but Flash does have more 5 and 6-win decks than Remand does. So the thing I wanted to ask is, can I do this for all of the data just to see like which cards get higher percentage win rate in the hands of the top players? And I actually can. So I have a visualization. So this is a graph of the x-axis is mean wins for all players. So basically, how much is the average player winning with this card? And then the y-axis is the percent change in expected win rate when played by top players. And then, we have the percentage change shown in color here. So first thing to note, the highest total percentage change in the hands of top players is Seething Song with a 58% change in expected win. So it goes from 2.37 all the way up to 3.76, which is just nuts. And then the worst or the lowest card is Boros' Citadel, which goes from 2.43 to 2.97. So it's about a 21% change in win rate, but because the baseline win rate is so low, like the overall change in win rate is not very good relative. Something you might notice is there appears to be a pretty strong trend line going through the data somewhere around here. And to me, I think this is because there's diminishing returns in how much you can actually improve your win rate. So we look at the highest winning card, Sanguine Evangelist, mean wins of all players 3.81. If you think about it, if this had 100% win rate, it's always giving 7 wins. There's no possible room for improvement relative to the base. Versus if you have a card all the way over here like Tendrils, it's only getting 2 wins. there's so much more room for improvement on that card because you can go from 0 to 7 additional wins, whereas a card that's already winning 3.8 games on average can't go up that much higher, right? The top players are winning 4.68 out of 7 total wins with this card. And like the mean cannot be 7 total wins. Like you're not going to win every single game, even with the best card in the entire cube. So there's some limit at how much you can win with a card, and you'll get diminishing returns in how much skill expression there is in a card based on its win rate. So to combat that, I have a slightly different graph where I put a trend line, and instead of looking at just the raw data, I look at how it is relative to the overall trend. And so this is that data. So we've plotted a trend line, and now the idea is basically cards below the trend line are below average skill expression cards, and the cards above the trend line are above average skill expression cards. Because like something like Thalia over here, its mean win was 3.64, but it went up to 4.77 in the hands of top players, which is a fairly large percentage change. And relative to how high the win rate is, makes it like an even bigger relative percentage change. Whereas something like Gut, very similar baseline win rate in the hands of all players, but in the hands of top players, it's winning 4.49 at the time, versus 4.77 in the hands of top players for Thalia. So even though they still have the same win rate in the hands of all players, top players are winning a lot more with Thalia, even though they're approaching the upper limit in terms of what win rate is, because mean wins of 4.77 is so high. Anyway, that's what this graph is suggesting. And then I've highlighted a couple of key cards that I've been talking about here and there, like Guide of Souls, not relatively a very skill testing card, because it doesn't change that much when in the hands of top players. Same with Gut, not very skill testing. But then you see like a Johnny is pretty skill testing, Wandering Emperor skill testing, things like that. Let's look at the interesting cards first, because this whole section over here is like the most skill testing cards in the cube. So let's highlight these for a second. Actually, that's less helpful. So like Knight of the Reliquary, it goes from 2.81 mean wins all the way up to 4.35. So Knight of the Reliquary in the hands of the average player, not very good. In the hands of a top player, 4.35 win rate is almost as good as Gut, meaning top players are winning about as much or slightly less with Knight of the Reliquary than they are with the Gut. To me, that is a skill testing card, because the average players don't know what to do with it, and the top players are crushing with it. So Seething Song, again, I guess Seething Song is the most skill testing card in the cube. Survival of the Fittest, very high change. Unburial Rites, Woe Strider, Scavenging Ooze. Yawgmoth goes from 2.77 all the way up to 4.12, which is like, that's like almost on par with Fiery Confluence in terms of the change. So it goes from a card way over here. Where is he? Yawgmoth goes from a card way over here in terms of win rate all the way up to like here. Really skill testing card. Recurring Nightmare, similar. Dark Ritual, Vampire Hexmage, Leovold, Field of the Dead. Wow, Field of the Dead really spiking there. Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger, Ulamog the Infinite Gyre. So to me, these are the skill testing cards. Eternal Witness, it seems like the green-black cards in the cube are the most skill testing, at least in terms of raw data, which just means when you put them in hands of bad players or average players, they do something, and the good players can do a lot more with them. Whereas if you compare, all the pet cards everyone's talking about, like, oh, Flash is so hard to play, it doesn't get that much better in the hands of top players. 35% increase, but the baseline win rate is so low that 35% increase isn't that impressive. Same with like Tolarian Academy. It's only a 30% increase in the hands of top players. And that, to me, it's like you just put artifacts in your deck and it's good. Like, you can get better if you're good at the game playing Tolarian Academy, but I'm just saying the data is suggesting that the skill or the ceiling that you can achieve with this card is just lower than what you can do elsewhere, right? The base mean wins of Tolarian Academy is 2.78, and it goes up to 3.63. Knight of the Reliquary has a slightly higher base min win rate. Let's look at something else. Scavenging Ooze. 2.69. Tolarian Academy is 2.78. So Scavenging Ooze performs worse in the hands of average players, but in the hands of top players, it's winning 4.1 games on average, whereas in the hands of top players, Tolarian Academy is only winning 3.63. So like, you know what I mean? Like that suggests that Scavenging Ooze is more skill testing than Tolarian Academy, more skill testing than Tinker, Sneak Attack, all of these cards that people like to say are like clever cards to play. So I'm gonna try and find a way to put this data up here because it's actually really interesting to go through. Like one thing I found, some of the worst cards in the cube that were not good and were not skill testing are like the talismans. So like Talisman of Hierarchy, Talisman of Unity, Talisman of Resilience, Talisman of Dominance, Talisman of Indulgence, Coalition Relic, like all of these 2-mana artifacts that give you mana, not very skill testing, and the ceiling is really low on them. They tended to perform the worst. But it is cool to see like similar cards clustered similarly. Like the talismans all have relatively consistent win rates and stuff like that. Mer Battlesphere, RIP, not doing very well in the hands of good players. Elder Gargoth kind of makes sense. It's just a 5-mana card that attacks and does stuff. What's over here? Tendrils of Agony was the lowest performing mean win rate, but it did get 45% better in the hands of top players. But Talisman or Tendrils of Agony in the hands of a good player performed worse than like Blood Tithe Harvester in the hands of an average player. So say that what you will. Same with Yawgmoth's Will. And just to get rid of any like doubt about, oh, but this is going to change over time. This is a graph of Sunbillow Verge, just using it as a proxy for the Boros cards right now, compared to like Tolarian Academy, Flash, Reanimate in terms of their win rate. So this is for all players. Not a lot changed. Again, I don't really know. The last day of data is a bit weird, but up until then, not a lot changed. And in the top players, we see Reanimate does spike somewhere around here, but overall Boros is still way above the rest of them. And in the next video, I'm going to go into 2-card combo synergies and stuff like that, like what cards are winning with what. Little preview because I've been working on it. Reanimate spikes here because Reanimate has high synergy with cheap cards. So Reanimate is winning not because it's being played in like Reanimator, but it's winning because people are playing it in Orzhov or Rakdos, Mardu, aggro decks, and reanimating small things to get value so they can keep attacking. So anyway, hopefully this video is a very concise, just saying the blue cards are not that skill testing and they're not even the best cards in the queue. And the data overwhelmingly suggests that to be the case. They're good, like you can play them. Good players with a blue card can beat average players with other cards. But I just don't want people getting it twisted that the blue cards are just somehow better for no reason. They are nowhere near the top performers in the cube, and they're nowhere near the top performers in the cube in the hands of top players. And strangely enough, the best performers of the cube are like the junk cards, Knight of the Reliquary, Unburial Rites, Croxra, Yawgmoth. Those are the skill testing cards in the cube. So yeah, if you're interested in this, like the analysis, let me know and I'll keep posting videos because there's so much more data to go through, and I'll see you there. Hey, and if you like the way I talk about card games, play card games, or just want to support the channel, or get a cool game yourself, I made a card game called Algomancy. You can go check that out, link in the description. You can buy that right now, but there's an expansion coming sometime next year on Kickstarter. That's going to be so cool. It adds 2 new elements to the game, light and dark. The cards look really cool. The mechanics, I'm so excited about. And it's going to be a ton of fun. So if you want to check that out, follow the Kickstarter link in the description. If you want to see the base game, that game is a ton of fun as well. You can just go get that right now through my store. Also link in the description.